A final farewell will be paid to Bicester by 23 Pioneer Regiment that's been based in the town for decades. BBC Radio Oxford's Charles Nove is in the town.
In Bicester's Market Square, the scene is set for this morning's farewell parade for the regiment that's called this town home in some way or another since 1941. Those decades of history are drawing to a close as cuts to the British Army see 23 Pioneer Regiment disbanded, their duties redistributed, some soldiers sent to other units, others made redundant. A special church service at St Edburgh's will be followed by a parade. The salute will be taken here in Market Square.
Well, you may know that the 23 Pioneer Regiment is preparing to say its final goodbye after being an integral part of Bicester for more than 70 years. Well, the regiment is being disbanded as part of a national plan to cut 20,000 Army jobs. But what will be the legacy of 23 Pioneer? And what next for the soldiers who comprise the unit? Well, over the next hour, we'll be hearing from the Mayor of Bicester, former soldiers, and learning more about the significance of the regiment to Bicester's history. It's set to be an emotional day. We always hear that the army is like being part of a family, and when you have a regiment so closely tied to a town, the army becomes part of an even bigger family. It becomes part of the very fabric of that community.
It's just so quiet. Honestly, it's like a ghost town some days. You can see the old tumbleweeds flying around camp. It's crazy. But once these parades are done, and then I think that'll be the sort of final straw then.
"8 days after I arrived, I had to announce to the regiment that we were not going to be part of the future army. That was clearly quite a hard time for the guys. This is a regiment with a strong identity, culture, and ethos, and quite a proud regiment, if I'm honest.
We are talking about the sole survivors from an organisation that formed in 1939 and during the war numbered nearly 1 million men under arms. The last remaining element of that massive organisation is due to disband.
He was very loyal to the regiment, and if he was here today, he would just be absolutely devastated that this would be happening. And that's why, on Sunday I'll be there representing him, because he can't be there, so I'll be there for him.
On the day of the parade, it'd be absolutely massive. It would be our way of saying thank you to Bicester, for the loyal service that, Bicester's provided to Free Pioneer Regiment.
Bicester to me, is more of a home than I can say what Wales is to me, and it'll always be a precious place.
I think it's very sad for the town. They've been here since 1940, which is a long time ago. And of course we named the square where the new shopping area is Pioneer Square. So that is a lasting reminder that they were here and won't be forgotten.
I've spent 14 years of my life here. My wife lives down here. My daughter sees this as a home. It'll be sad to say goodbye to Bicester and the people of Bicester.
And you can hear how much 23 Pioneer means to everyone in Bicester. More over the next hour. And we'll be crossing live to Bicester, where Charles Nove is among the crowds gathering ahead of today's parade. I'm Bill Heine. You're listening to BBC Radio Oxford. Well, we know that 23 Pioneer Regiment will be parading through Bicester. They're saying a final farewell to the town. And Charles Nove will be there watching. Charles joins us live from Bicester's Market Square. So, Charles, how's it looking?
Well, it's very sunny. I'm standing here in the Market Square, and it's just beginning to acquire a bit of a buzz. It's been very quiet, just as the military personnel get a few things set up ahead of the parade. But noticeably more people are beginning to gather, and there's a group of veterans gathered ahead of, in fact, they're just starting to move off down towards St Edburgh's Church right now, because the church service that precedes the parade will happen at St Edburgh's at 11:30. Do you know, just as you were playing that Daniel Merriweather record about painting it red, I'm minded of that old saying in the British Army: if it moves, salute it; if it doesn't, paint it. And this is the sort of regiment who'd undertake that sort of mission, because the 23 Pioneer Regiment's part of the Royal Logistics Corps, and they're the chaps who pitch up anywhere in the world, often at very short notice, and just do what needs to be done. It's a regiment of multi-skilled soldiers with disciplines ranging from operational hygiene to defence skills to the artisan skills, bricklaying, concreting, carpentry, logistic enabling, assault duties, you name it, they do it and they've done it. I mentioned when I was talking to David Prever earlier on that back in the World War II closing stages, they were the chaps who started bolting together the Mulberry harbours to enable the Normandy landings to take place. More recently, they've done deployments to Afghanistan, tours of duty in Iraq, Bosnia and Cyprus. Each time just enabling things to happen. And that's a tradition they're very proud of.
Well, certainly the unsung soldiers and heroes. But they're going to have their song today and marching to it. Tell us about the parade.
Well, we have the church service at St Edburgh's due to start in about a quarter of an hour's time. And then at around 12:30, we're expecting a march of 150 troops led on their way by the Army Reserve's combined band of the Royal Signals and the Royal Anglians. They will march from St Edburgh's up here to the Market Square and then onwards to the Bicester Town Council offices in Garth Park, where there'll be a reception to say the formal farewells. Here in the Market Square, the salute will be taken by a Deputy Lord Lieutenant of Oxfordshire, by the Mayor of Bicester, Councillor Lynn Pratt, and the Commanding Officer of the Bicester Garrison, who's Colonel Angus Matthey. And they'll be taking that salute on a white ceremonial dais, which is about 10 feet from where I'm standing in the Market Square.
Yes, you say the salute will be taken partly by the Deputy Lord Lieutenant of Oxfordshire. Well, that's Brigadier Ian Inshaw, and I'll be talking to him later on in the programme. But yes, who are the people who will be there? Who's going to be talking? Just give me a flavour of the kind of energy that's buzzing about.
Well, it's difficult to gauge at this stage because right now they're all heading for the church. I know amongst the veterans who are gathered here, there's a great spirit of mixed pride and sorrow. I spoke just a few minutes ago to a chap called Dave Parris, who joined the Pioneer Regiment in 1971, and he was distinctly moist about the eyes as he spoke of his sadness at seeing it disbanded. But also, as he said phrases like, once a pioneer, always a pioneer, we're a band of brothers. You know, the pioneers are never forgotten and so on. And wished well to those who are being either redeployed to other regiments or redeployed to the hard outside world through redundancy. As they go to Garth Park, there'll be speeches there and a presentation to the Mayor, Lynn Pratt, by the commanding officer of 23 Pioneer Regiment, Lieutenant Colonel David Clouston, and that's by way of saying thanks for the support and affection that they've had from Bicester across the last 70 plus years. They've been here a long time.
Well, Charles Nove, thank you very much indeed. And speaking of the Mayor of Bicester, Lynn Pratt, well, Bicester is a garrison town. The Army is woven into the fabric of the community. So, as 23 Pioneer Regiment prepare to say farewell to Bicester forever, I've been speaking with the town's mayor, Lynn Pratt, and she says that today is a sad day for the town.
They've been much involved attending our remembrance service on Remembrance Day and our civic service. They've also come to our carnivals and brought equipment and detector dogs and things for the children to do. So very much involved with the town.
Let me just understand about the carnival. I was surprised to hear that they came to that. And the detector dogs, what exactly were they doing?
These are the dogs that detect for mines and bombs out in war zones. And so they brought some of those along, which obviously the children loved. And also they let children use some of the equipment that they have, that they use for searching for mines, etc.
What kind of equipment is this?
Sort of mine detectors, small detectors. So the children just loved that. So it was very good this year. And also they had teams of soldiers who dismantled the robots that they also use in war to detect mines. And so they dismantled them and then put them back together. And the town council provided a trophy for the best team.
Sounds like they're a good bunch of people.
Yeah,
They've also been involved in the civic service for the mayor.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, the commanding officer of the garrison read the lesson at the service, so there's always a presence there, and they bring troops to march in the parade for that as well. So they've had a big presence in the town, and they will be missed, and it will be a sad day, but we are hoping to get new regiments in from Germany. We're coming back from Germany next year, so, you know, new things will happen depending on what they are.
When you say goodbye to a good neighbour, it's sometimes a very emotional moment. Do you think you'll be shedding a tear?
Possibly. I can be very emotional anyway, and I think there will be, yeah. And of course we named the square where the new shopping area is Pioneer Square. So that is a lasting reminder that they were here and won't be forgotten.
The mayor of Bicester, Lynn Pratt, there. Well, you heard there, the 23 Pioneer, what it all means to the town. But what does Bicester mean to the soldiers who serve with the regiment? Well, Major Richard Taftick joined the Pioneers in 1984.
First and foremost, 23 Pioneer Regiment is my regiment. I've always seen it that way, and I'm very proud to be a pioneer.
Could you tell me, first of all, let's get this into context. What was Bicester like when you arrived in 84?
In September 1984, Bicester was a very, very quiet market town. I always remember as a young lad looking for a taxi at about 11:30 on a Wednesday night, and you couldn't even get a taxi. The town has changed significantly over the years. When I first came here, all the traffic went through the centre of town and down Sheep Street, and it was very difficult to get home on the weekends because you spent the first hour of the journey trying to get through Bicester. And over the years, I've seen it develop, you know, and Bicester to me, you know, is more of a home than I can say what Wales is to me. I spent the majority of my adult life in Bicester, and it'll always be a precious place.
I suppose that when you look back over your time in the military here with the unit, there must be certain things that stand out. What are they?
There are a number of issues. The welcome that the town has always given us when we've come back off operations across the whole of the piece. The dramatic change was, you know, in 1984 we were part of the Royal Pioneer Corps, as it was then. The Royal Pioneer Corps amalgamated into the Royal Logistic Corps. Up until then, Pioneers were serving globally across all theatres and operations across the world. And then, you know, 23 Pioneer Regiment Royal Logistic Corps was formed, and then that became, you know, the spiritual home of Pioneers. And Bicester Town has always been the home of Pioneers since that date. And a lot of people look at Bicester as the home of Pioneers.
Could you tell me a bit about the morale over the years? How would you characterise it? Unless you served in the military, it's hard to explain it to civilians who may have no connections with the military. But you do not meet friends. I work in the oil industry in Aberdeen, and there is nothing like it at all. Comrades and friends that you get, that you served on operations, sometimes in our darkest times, sometimes in our happiest times. It's just a unique thing, you know, and the brotherhood of the Pioneers is always strong anyway. And the work that Norman's done with the Royal Pioneer Corps Association, which brings us together on an annual basis, and it's just that charge that you need to get you through the working year on Civilian Street. So it's just absolutely unique. And that's Major Richard Taftick, who joined the Pioneers in 1984. In a moment, we'll be looking back at the regiment's history.
Radio for Oxfordshire.
BBC Radio Oxford.
David Prever.
What you get from me is a debrief of the day's news. If it's been happening during the day in Oxfordshire or anywhere else in the country or around the world, we'll be talking about it in the afternoon. So whether you're on the school run or on your way home or you're just leaving the office, I'll tell you exactly what's been going on during your day. The best thing about my show is meeting the people who make Oxfordshire tick and asking them those really difficult questions about the the issues that really matter to us all.
David Prever.
Weekday afternoons from 4.
BBC Radio Oxford.
Hello there and welcome along if you've just joined us. I'm Bill Heine, and this morning it's a special show as 23 Pioneer Regiment prepares to say a final goodbye to Bicester. For more than 70 years it's been an integral part of the town, but government cuts means that it's being disbanded. Well, any minute now a church service is due to begin, and then at 12:30, troops will march through the Market Square and on to Garth Park, where there will be an official presentation. Let's take a look at the history of 23 Pioneer with someone who probably knows more about the regiment than anyone else.
My name is John Starling. I'm a retired Lieutenant Colonel from the Royal Pioneer Corps and what later became the Royal Logistic Corps. And I am now the historian for the Royal Pioneer Corps Association, which operates out of Bicester. We are talking about the sole survivors from an organisation that formed in 1939 and during the war numbered nearly 1 million men under arms. This massive organisation, which later became the Royal Pioneer Corps, and in 1993 reduced and became 23 Pioneer Regiment of the Royal Logistic Corps. The last remaining element of that massive organisation is due to disband. On D-Day itself, 8,000 pioneers landed on the first day. 30 days after the invasion, there was 125,000 pioneers ashore. One of the companies that landed on D-Day itself was called 144 Company. And 144 Squadron, as it is now, is the headquarters squadron of 23 Pioneer Regiment. And they took serious casualties when one of their landing craft was hit during the landing on the beaches. The main role on D-Day of the initial wave was to clear the mines and lay tracking to get the vehicles off the beaches and set up concentration areas for the stores to arrive and the wounded to go out. So on the original landing, their main job was clearing the beaches of mines, obstacles, booby traps, and also recovering all the casualties, be they wounded or dead. When we landed on D-Day, we didn't have a big stores supply to help us. Everything we needed, we had to take ashore manually. You had to physically offload it off the landing crafts or the docks, and that was done by the pioneers. Later on, the building of the Mulberry Harbour, all the labour of that Mulberry Harbour was done by the pioneers. The laying of Pluto, the pipeline under the ocean, was done by pioneers. Although the pioneer was not necessarily directly in the front line, that was not his job. He was an armed soldier who could fight. And we took casualties from artillery fire throughout the D-Day landings. And if you go to the Bayeux War Cemetery, there's a high proportion of members of the Pioneer Corps who were killed actually on the 6th of June on the landing. This is the Royal Pioneer Corps Regimental March. It was written in 1940 by a German who was in the British Army. It's a little known fact that many Germans served on our side in the Second World War because they've been persecuted by Hitler. Not just Jewish personnel, but there were communists and intellectuals. And they all initially served in the Pioneer Corps. In 1993, we no longer have that march because we amalgamated into the Royal Logistic Corps. But it's liable to be played when we're on parade as an honour to the people who used to be part of the Royal Pioneer Corps. At short notice, the Army would deploy a battalion or a unit to a threatened area just to show our foot on the ground. It doesn't mean we're actually going to war, but you need to go out at short notice. When I was a company commander in 1993 in Bicester, I had to send 8 men at 6 hours' notice to Kuwait. I received the requirement at 6 o'clock on a Friday evening, and at midday the next day they had to be ready to fly out of Lynham, fully equipped, which is quite an achievement. And they spent something like 4 months in the desert outside Kuwait and then returned. I personally am very saddened to see the demise of this regiment, because We don't know where we're going to go to war. We don't know what the requirements will be. And the great advantage of the pioneer was that he was flexible. We had one unit that went out to work somewhere in Africa on a normal construction site, and they ended up being diverted into Freetown in Sierra Leone to bring in the British Army that was flying in to stop the civil war in Sierra Leone. As time passes, I think we're not to forget the sacrifice of our predecessors, the pioneers that served with us in the Second World War, all the Africans, the Indians, not just the British soldiers. And hopefully we won't forget the people who served post-war, the current soldiers who are back from Afghanistan. There have been sacrifices made by our regiment and other regiments, and it's important these are remembered. It will fade with memory, but it'll still be there.
Well, you heard there John Starling speaking about sacrifices which have been made by the pioneers throughout history and in more recent conflicts. Well, Heather Wood's husband, Charlie, was the first soldier from 23 Pioneer Regiment to die in Afghanistan. Speaking to David Prever earlier, Heather explained what happened on the day in December 2010 when she found out that he had died.
You know, I can still remember it as if it was yesterday, when obviously I got the news, what had happened. And just how, just suddenly my life had just completely been ripped apart, I guess. Literally a few moments before I'd found out the news, my whole life was mapped out for me. I knew, what me and Charlie had plans, what we were going to do, and then suddenly, it just all disappeared in the blink of an eye. So, I remember that very well. Obviously now, so we're 3.5 years down the line. Life does look a bit different now. I still think about Charlie every single day, and he's always, and will always be a part of my life. But you just learn and find ways to move on. That's not to say you'll ever forget. And I'll never stop loving him, but, and I still, miss him deeply every single day, but life has to go on. But still massively proud of him.
As a military wife, that place that you found yourself in on that day when you heard the news, was it somewhere where in your darkest thoughts in the early hours of the morning you'd been to before, the thought that one day this might happen?
It sounds a bit ridiculous, really, because even though you know the dangers and you know that they're going to a war zone, I guess you do have to think about what if anything should happen, but you don't actually ever think it's going to happen to you, which is a bit naive, really. But you see it on the news, soldiers being killed, and there's always that kind of, oh, thank goodness that's not my soldier, that's not Charlie. But when you get that news, you kind of think, gosh, why Charlie? Why us? There was 9,000 troops in Afghanistan the day Charlie got killed, so why did it have to be him? But at the same time, I guess through time you learn how to cope with these things, and you learn not to be bitter, and there's a part of you that goes, actually, but why not Charlie?
What was he like, Heather? What was he like as a man?
Charlie was like, he was an amazing man. He was a really liked man. He was good fun. He'd always make people smile and laugh, and people actually wanted to be around him, which was, and I think I look back now and I look back to his funeral, and I think that just said everything about Charlie. Just the people that turned out for him, and everybody wanted to be there to pay their respects, and I was just overwhelmed by it all. And I'm sure Charlie was looking down, sort of having a little smile. Because I don't actually think he knew what people really thought of him and how much he was respected and liked, but he was a great husband, a great uncle, a great son.
What did the regiment mean to him, Heather? 23 Pioneer Regiment. It's going to be a very emotional weekend for everybody who is involved in Pioneer. But what did it mean to your husband?
I think Charlie was really, really proud to be a pioneer. He was really proud, and, if people would sort of, because they do in the army, there's always that friendly banter and what regiment you're in and what you do. And And sometimes you get a bit of stick for being a pioneer, but you know what? He was so proud. You know, he was a pioneer through and through, and he was very loyal to the regiment and his soldiers. You know, and if he was here today, he would just be absolutely devastated that this would be happening. And that's why, you know, on Sunday I'll be there representing him, because he can't be there, so I'll be there for him.
And that's Heather Wood. Her husband Charlie was killed while serving in Afghanistan with 23 Pioneer. She's in Bicester today, representing her husband, as she was saying, and she must be very proud, and he was very proud to be a pioneer. BBC Radio Oxford, I'm Bill Heine, and this morning I'm presenting a special show as 23 Pioneer Regiment prepares to say a final goodbye to Bicester. For more than 70 years, it's been an integral part of the town, but government cuts mean that it's now being disbanded. Well, the decision to disband 23 Pioneer came as a massive blow to the soldiers and their families, of course, especially with so many of them being made redundant. Well, let's hear now from the man at the very top of the regiment who had to break the terrible news to his men.
My name is David Clouston. I'm the commanding officer of 23 Pioneer Regiment Royal Logistic Corps, and I'm a Lieutenant Colonel in the British Army. And I've been here since June 2012.
Hundreds of soldiers in Oxfordshire have been told their regiment is to be cut as part of a multi-billion-pound saving to the defence budget. 23 Pioneer Regiment based in Bicester.
8 days after I arrived, I had to announce to the regiment that we were not going to be part of the future army. That was clearly quite a hard time for the guys. This is a regiment with a strong identity, culture and ethos, and quite a proud regiment, if I'm honest, too.
Today, members have been told their regiment is being broken up as the government looks to save billions of pounds from the defence budget.
The night before I had to make the announcement, I took a phone call from a general to tell me that's what I had to do. So it was fairly short and sharp. When I put the phone down, having taken that phone call, that I had to break this news, you know, I sat in my office for a little while and I just, you know, tried to get my own head into, you know, the ramifications, the implications. So after about an hour or so, I got in my regimental sergeant major, who's the senior soldier in the regiment. It was embargoed, really, to me, but I needed to have a discussion with someone that I knew and trusted and knew the regiment and been here a lot longer than I had. And we just kicked it around a bit, you know. In the end, we just came to the conclusion that, you know, these are soldiers and they deserve to be told like soldiers. So we had a parade. A little hollow square, so an N shape, for want of a better word. And I just stood in the middle and I told them, and I just, you know, kept it simple that the regiment was being disbanded, and that we didn't have all the answers right now, but we'd work our best to get those answers. We had some really, in my opinion, quite vulnerable soldiers when I announced them. No idea of what jobs they would do, no idea of where they might live even. If I make a soldier redundant, it's not just him that it affects, it is family. You know, I'm married myself, I'm in my 11th house, I understand turbulence. You know, I moved to Germany at 3 weeks' notice with my daughter, you know, very, very young. It's hard. It's a never-ending battle, you know. Everyone is a person and therefore everyone is unique, and we've just tried our best to help each of those individuals as best we can.
Well, that decision to disband 23 Pioneer Regiment was made as part of £20,000 army cuts. Well, a complete restructuring of the forces involved here. Brigadier Ian Inshaw is the former garrison commander at Bicester, and he told me the whole of the army is changing immensely.
I can remember in the 70s when there was a massive reorganisation of the army, particularly in Germany, where we went down from a total, including the UK divisions, from 4 divisions down to 3. I can remember then, following that, there were successive amalgamations and mergers of regiments, and it's almost happening all the time. It's an evolutionary process. But the important thing to remember is that it's geared to the perceived threat at the time, of course tempered to a large extent by economies as well and economics. And so the Army now is looking towards 2020, when it will be in a totally different format, to allow it to cater for the perceived threat.
Well, could you describe that format?
The way in which it is being formed is going to rely, to a larger extent, on specialist forces. So there will be many more parachute and special operations people trained, which is probably a good thing. the Army will be better equipped with more modern equipment, which has the effect of reducing the amount of manpower needed to carry out the task. And it will be something that's looking forward to beyond 2020. And as I say, it has to cater for what the perceived threat is to the country.
And if you were to sum up what the 23 Pioneer Regiment has done to help the country prepare for the perceived threats in the past and the present, how would you characterize the unit?
Oh, there's been an immense contribution by the Royal Pioneer Corps. I mean, they've been going since 1854. They formed the Army Works Corps. They were then disbanded 2 years later. They were then reformed in 1917 and disbanded in 1920. And then in the Second World War, they were responsible for laying the pipeline under the ocean during D-Day to provide fuel to the invading forces. So they've had an immense contribution.
I seem to recall that Winston Churchill, at the D-Day landings, he referred to the Royal Pioneer Corps and said, "You're unloading history." You think that's fair?
Absolutely. I mean, their motto, "Work conquers all," or the Latin "Labor omnia vincit," is absolutely right. They are the real artisans of the military, and their badge with the rifle and the shovel crossed really tells the story that they are soldiers who are also the labour force which make things happen.
I know that you are this Sunday going to be taking the salute in Bicester at the parade. What would you say to the pioneers?
Well, the first thing, Bill, is that I'm taking the salute on behalf of the Lord Lieutenant of Oxfordshire, not in my military role. When I was at Bicester, they were the most amazing members of the garrison, and I had great fondness for them. You know, they do an awful lot for the civilians in Bicester. I remember there was an old Catholic school at Piggy Lane, and it was a wooden structure. They needed to demolish it so that the area could be developed, and no one could afford to do it. And I asked 23 Regiment if they wanted a training exercise, and they said yes, they did. And I said, do you mind demolishing a school? And they said, certainly. I said, but it's the wooden school, not the brick one next to it. So they said, fine. And they do it on Saturday morning. I went down at 10 o'clock, and there it was, gone. There was nobody there, but the school had gone, and thankfully the brick one was still standing, although they wanted to have a go at that as well. So they are a great bunch of people, and I'll be very sad to see them go from Bicester. But what I will say is that everybody is subject to change, and the role that they fulfilled has got to be done in some other way. And one thing that we know about the British Army is that it is immensely flexible and is able to cater for it. But at the end of the day, the change has come, but they will be able to look the world in the eye and stand up straight and tall and say, I was a pioneer. In fact, I was a Royal Pioneer.
Brigadier Ian Inshaw, who's taking part in the proceedings today in Bicester. Well, a church service has just begun, and then at 12:30 troops will march through the Market Square and to Garth Park, where there will be an official presentation. Next, we'll head back to Bicester, where Charles Nove is among the crowds gathering in the Market Square.
BBC Radio.
Well, 23 Pioneer Regiment is saying its final goodbye to Bicester today after being based in the town since the 1940s. It's being disbanded as part of the 20,000 job cuts in the Army. They'll be parading through the town later, and Charles Nove will be there watching, but he joins us now live from Bicester's Market Square. So what's happening now over there, Charles?
Well, you know, there's an almost mystical air of anticipation here because people are gathering. You take your eyes off for a moment, and suddenly a load of people arrive. You look back and go, "Oh, where did all they come from?" It's beginning to fill up. As I stand in my vantage point in the Market Square, there's the big double pillar box, one of those big double-sized post box, and it's got two small boys sitting on it, and a large litter bin next to it, and it's got two small girls sitting on it. And just people are getting into position outside shops and around the phone boxes and so on to make sure they get a good view. The timings have changed ever so slightly from what I was told earlier on. The latest we have is that somewhere between 10 past and 12:15 is when we expect the troops to set off from St Edburgh's once the church service there is over, and then they'll be led by a military band in our direction.
Well, are there lots of bunting and barriers and flags? I know there must be loads of families. Tell us more about the parade.
Well, we know that they'll be led by a band. It's the Army Reserve's combined band of the Royal Signals and the Royal Anglians, and they will lead a squad we expect of 150 troops to march from St Edburgh's up here to the Market Square along the north side of the Market Square. They will be having a salute taken as they pass here. There's a dais in front of me, and right now representatives of the Bicester Town Council are dressing it. They're putting a garland of flowers around the front and generally sorting it out. One of them has also got the mace that goes with the office of Mayor of Bicester, which will be given to the Mayor Lynn Pratt in time for her part in taking the salute. Also taking the salute will be the gentleman you were speaking to there, Brigadier Ian Inshaw, Deputy Lord Lieutenant of Oxfordshire, and the commanding officer of the Bicester Garrison, that's Colonel Angus Matthey.
Well, you mentioned that they were addressing the stand. I was over there earlier this week, and, Bicester, I wouldn't be surprised if it won the Best Town Award in terms of its beautiful floral displays, because the deep blues and the bright yellows are magnificent. Well, tell us, Charles, what happens after the parade?
They move on to the offices of Bicester Town Council, which is just round the corner. You pass the Market Square, hang a right at the roundabout, and you're pretty well there. There will be speeches there and a presentation made to the Mayor Lynn Pratt by the commanding officer of 23 Pioneer Regiment, that's Lieutenant Colonel David Clouston. And that presentation is by way of saying, thank you, Bicester. Thank you for the support and the affection they've had from Bicester across the last 70 plus years. I was speaking just earlier on to one of the veterans here just before he hightailed it down to the service. His name's Dave Parris, and he had enormous pride in the Pioneer Regiment. He joined in 1971. Once a pioneer, always a pioneer, he told me. And he told me what the Pioneer Regiment specifically means to him.
The Royal Pioneer Corps is unique because we're a band of brothers. We stick by each other thick and thin. And once you leave the Corps, you're never forgotten. Even if you don't go to the reunions, your name sticks in people's memories. Everyone knows me because I smoke a pipe. Everyone's got their own little nicknames. We just stick together. We're a band of brothers. A pioneer dies, everyone sends a sympathy, and some of us make the effort to go to their funeral. This is to show our last respect. That's what we're all about.
It's a fantastic day over there in Bicester. Let's find out now what it's like to be part of the 23 Pioneer Regiment. We can hear from some of the men currently serving with 23 Pioneer.
My name is Sergeant Cruttenden, Troop Sergeant within 187 Squadron, 23 Pioneer Regiment. My first tour was Northern Ireland, and that was as a driver.
Soldiers from Bicester-based 23 Pioneer Regiment have led an operation to deliver humanitarian aid in southern Iraq. They carried out 2 aid drops in the town of Al-Zabaya.
My second tour was Iraq, humanitarian aid. After the humanitarian aid, we went into sort of a patrols company. I've also done Afghanistan twice. Just last year, I went out as a search team commander as part of a high-threat search team. It's quite a wide spectrum of different tasks and different jobs, but that's what the Pioneers have always been about. We're versatile and able to sort of take on any job and do it to a very, very high standard.
23 Pioneer Regiment do some of the most dangerous work. In Afghanistan, they provide protection to vehicle convoys travelling in Helmand province. More recently, they've joined the effort to identify improvised explosive devices, working alongside bomb disposal experts based in Didcot.
The tour that we did last year, working with the Counter-ID Search Task Force, you get a massive sort of job satisfaction out of finding those IEDs because you know you've taken them out of the ground and no one's going to step on them.
My name is Corporal John Gauntlet from 23 Pioneer Regiment. Joined the army in 1996, got to the regiment, and then that Christmas I was sat in Bosnia in 1996. So I'm from Birmingham, didn't see the outside of Birmingham until I joined the army. Then all of a sudden I was on a flight. That was my whole idea of joining the army. A, I wanted to join it, and B, you get to see some of the world, don't you? So.
My name's Mark Bennett. I'm at 23 Pioneer Regiment, part of 187 Squadron. I first joined in 1990 So quite a while ago, 92, went off to Northern Ireland. I went to Falklands in 93, done 2 tours of Bosnia, went out to Iraq at the end of 2003, a day in Iraq in 2008. Well, 12 hours I think I lasted for. My second youngest, he had a heart issue, and so I flew out. The doctors found out on my way out there, so I got flown back home on the same plane I landed on. So that was a short tour. They wouldn't let me go back because of the severity of it all, but he's fine now. And then 2010 on the combat logistic patrols in Afghan, and then 2012 as counter-ID Afghan. Afghan, everyone sees it as a war-torn territory, but I tell you, some of the views when you're out on the ground are just picturesque. You won't get them anywhere else, especially when you're high on the plateaus in the mountains. They're just unbelievable.
There was a warm welcome for the members of 2-3 Pioneer Regiment when they were reunited with their families at their base in Bicester.
It had been an anxious wait for the families at troop headquarters.
This regiment's got a massive history wherever it's been, and whatever it's done well. I don't know, I think I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie, so anything that sort of gets your pulse racing is quite enjoyable for me. Yeah, I just love the job. I really do. I love the job. I love this regiment. It's a sad day, 27th will be a sad day because the regiment's folding and that's it.
My name is Regiment. I'm the Regimental Sergeant Major of 23 Pioneer Regiment. I've been in the post now for approximately 15 months. I had served in the regiment previously, left and then came back. So when I came back to take this appointment, I knew the regiment was already being disbanded. Clearly I heard that news when I was serving away from the regiment. It was a really, really sad day. There's a lot of memories and history behind the regiment. And I knew when I came back then that part of my job really was to lead the regiment through disbandment and make sure the soldiers were in the best possible condition to head for Civvy Street if that's where they were going.
On the day of the parade, it'd be absolutely massive. It would be our way of saying thank you to Bicester, for the loyal service that, Bicester's provided to 3 Pioneer Regiment. So
Pioneers have been in Bicester since 1940. So that's a long history with the local community. I've spent 14 years of my life here. My wife lives down here. My daughter sees this as a home. So when you take that all in, it'll be sad to say goodbye to Bicester and the people of Bicester.
A shopping development in Bicester is to be named after an army regiment which is based in the town. It'll be named the Pioneer Centre after 2-3 Pioneer Regiment, which is being disbanded as part of government cuts.
Years ago, it was a completely different ball game. We all lived in 8-man block rooms. Now they've all got single-man rooms in the block, and obviously in an 8-man room, somebody wanted to go out for a drink, they go past, kick your bed, you're coming out. In here, trying to get hold of somebody in one of those rooms, it's like having a hermit.
This is my time now, this is my preparation time, and make myself more employable for obviously the big wide world when I venture out there. So, yeah.
Not a case they don't want to be at work, they want to be thinking about their future. So sort of a lot of other side of life, all the fun parts are starting to push out to the sideline now. And the ones that have volunteered for redundancy and they're getting out, they're looking at what they're going to do when they get out. It's just so quiet. I say it's like a ghost town some days. You can see the old tumbleweeds flying around camp. It's crazy. But once these parades are done, and then it's I think that'll be the sort of final straw then. Me, I've taken redundancy, volunteered for it. I'll be out by December. I'm looking at doing fibre optics. I'm looking forward to it now. I'm 40 this year. I've had a good innings. I think it's time to call it a day and actually enjoy civil life with a wife and kids.
A very powerful, momentous day for 23 Pioneer Regiment in Bicester.
It's a really big day for Bicester today, and quite a sad one as well. And Charles Nove is live in Bicester as they say farewell to 2-3 Pioneer. Charles, where are you and exactly what's happening at the moment?
I am in the Market Square in Bicester, and I am far from alone, Phil. There are certainly, I would say, upwards of 300 people thronging the streets just as I look, particularly on the north side of the Market Square. It's very busy, and on the road leading up behind me, all awaiting the parade, which will be heading off from St Edburgh's Church very shortly. Standing right beside me now is the Mayor of Bicester, who's Councillor Lynn Pratt, and has been to the church service. How was it?
It was very nice, very appropriate for the day. The church was packed. A lot of veterans here, previous members of Pioneer Corps, 2 Chelsea pensioners, which was great to see, and obviously the existing regiment. So very good, excellent service, yes.
And your feelings on this day that we gather to say farewell to 23 Pioneer Regiment?
A sad day for Bicester. It is. They've been connected with Bicester since 1940, which is a long time to be in one place. We look forward to the future, to new regiments coming in 2015, coming back from Germany. So we hope to welcome them as much as we've kept a good welcome for the pioneers.
And for the new people, they'll come to a freshly refurbished barracks because there's a lot of work to go on there.
Yes, definitely, yes. Yeah, there has a lot of work gone on, and I suspect that's why new regiments are coming into Bicester. So.
Well, your duties await you. The saluting party, of which you are a key member, is gathering, and I can see you looking nervously towards the ceremonial days because you're expecting to be marched off by a sergeant major in a minute, aren't
probably,
you?
Yes.
So we better let you go and take up your position.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Mayor of Bicester, Lynn Pratt there, and she's going off to join a saluting party, which is also made up of the Deputy Lieutenant of Oxfordshire, retired Brigadier Ian Inshaw, Sir Tony Baldry, MP for North Oxfordshire, the Deputy Mayor of Bicester, Jim French, and the Commanding Officer of the Bicester Garrison, who is Colonel Angus Matthey. As I look, I can see all our saluting party is gathered and showing a show of force either side of the ceremonial dais, which faces the north side of the market square here. There are two splendid, I think they're warrant officers from their uniform, regimental sergeant majors of the Pioneer Corps, and each is holding across his shoulder a huge ceremonial axe. The symbol of the Pioneer Regiment is a pair of crossed axes and a sword, reflecting the fact that this is an artisan regiment full of multi-skilled people who get on with whatever it is you need them to do, wherever in the world you need them to do it, and they'll just get on with it. So the motto is reflected here by two huge golden axes being wielded by these rather fearsome-looking company sergeant majors with grey beards, standing solemnly to attention either side of the saluting dais. As we heard from the Mayor there's been a splendid church ceremony down at St Hedberg's, and very shortly now we're anticipating that a military band will lead the way, and they'll be followed by 150 soldiers parading up towards and past the market square here in Bicester.
Charles, thank you very much, and we'll come back to you a bit later on as that parade maybe comes through Bicester and hear all of the excitement and the pomp. We do things like this very well in this country, don't we? I love a decent parade. Actually, we're just going to very quickly cross over to
soldiers who've left St Edburgh's Church and are headed now for the market square, where the salute will be taken by the Mayor of Bicester, Councillor Lynn Pratt, Deputy Lieutenant of Oxfordshire, Brigadier Ian Inshaw, Sir Tony Baldry, the MP for North Oxfordshire, Deputy Mayor Jim French, and the Commanding Officer of the Garrison in Bicester, Colonel Angus Matthey, all standing ready on the ceremonial dais, ready to take the salute as the soldiers pass by.
That's Charles Nove, who's live in Bicester, watching the parade for us this afternoon as 2-3 Pioneer say farewell.
Standing now just behind the assembled dignitaries. Those who qualify for a seat number 36, I can tell you. 36 reasonably comfortable chairs were unloaded from a large army truck earlier on this morning, along with a flagpole. The flagpole has at its base the crest of the Royal Logistics Corps, of which 23 Pioneer Regiment is a part. The Logistics Corps, as the name suggests, the section of the army responsible for getting things done and getting things moved wherever, whenever required. 23 Pioneer Regiment has a flag displaying its crest, the motto of two crossed axes and a sword running up the middle, representing their artisan skills. They can do all sorts of things. They're a group of multi-skillers, and also the sword, of course, representing that they are soldiers. The band is passing me now, the Army Reserves Band of the Royal Signals and the Royal Anglians. They receive a warm welcome from the crowd here, clapping along with the music, and the first of the soldiers are passing now the saluting point. Rifles with fixed bayonets, ceremonial order. Serious faces. They have just, the first phalanx of men has just passed the saluting point. Their colleagues follow on. Warmly applauded by the crowd here in the Market Square in Bicester.
Charles Nove there, live for us in the centre of Bicester, and we'll return to him a little later on once the parade has made it past him. You're listening to BBC Radio Oxford 95.2 FM. It's the Garden Cafe. First, though, let's just very quickly cross to Charles Nove, who's in Bicester for us, where 23 Pioneer are saying farewell. Charles, what's been happening?
Well, right now, 23 Pioneer are saying farewell in a very informal setting because they've gathered for a reception at the Town Council offices at Garth Park, just round the corner from the Market Square. But the formal part of the goings-on happened a little earlier on. They attended a special church service at St Edburgh's and then marched up through the Market Square, where they were very, very warmly received. The applause from the crowd was notable by its length and density. The applause rang out and was sustained as the entire marching band, first of all, followed by the 150 soldiers, went past. Very enthusiastic reception from a crowd which gathered quite slowly as we were setting up our stall here, and then really became pretty dense. There were well upwards of 300 people certainly gathered around the Market Square to watch the troops go past, and as the last of the parade went past, the square emptied really quickly as people ran round the corner to get a second glimpse of the marching men as they headed towards Garth Park.
And BBC Radio Oxford's Charles Nove has been there watching the commemorations, the marching and everything that's been happening. Charles, what's happening right now?
Well, right now where I am, the grand total of Market Square going back to normal life, because it was closed for parking, but it's now open for parking again, and people are parking in it. The action was busy here earlier on when the troops left their church service at St Edburgh's, and led by a military band, the combined band of the Royal Signals and the Royal Anglicans, they made their way up here from St Edburgh's, the short march to the Market Square. The crowd was thick here. There's a good 300 plus people lining the street here to cheer them on. There was the formal reception for them as well, as the salute was taken as they passed the ceremonial days. But the crowd applauded every man, loud and long. It was a very, very warm reception. Then they rounded, if you know the geography of the Market Square here, they went up the north side of it and then turned right, aiming for Garth Park. As the last of the chaps on parade passed the crowd here, the crowd left en masse via the other side of the Market Square to get another look at them as they marched onwards towards Garth Park. So the square emptied really quickly. Anyway, then they went on to a reception in the park. There were speeches there, and a presentation made from the military to the civilian side of life. A presentation to the Mayor, Lynn Pratt, by the commanding officer of 23 Pioneer Regiment, Lieutenant Colonel David Clouston. And that was to say thanks for the support and the affection they've had from Bicester across the last 70 plus years. And they're very conscious of the warmth of the reception and how there's a sort of family feel between the people of Bicester and the military side of Bicester. Every member of the military to whom I've spoken has mentioned in the course of the conversation that family feel and how close to the town they feel. We've been round to the reception in Garth Park speaking to some people. Amongst them, I spoke to a private rook of the Pioneer Regiment and I asked him what the future holds for him now.
Well, I volunteered for redundancy, so I'll be out of the army on December the 11th, and I'm hoping to get into cranes and plant operator.
And is that what you've been doing, the sort of work you've been doing in the regiment?
No, not at all. It's my resettlement course I've gone for, which I'll be going away for 7 weeks in September to start.
So they support you well with retraining?
Oh yeah, they're behind us 100%, help with getting courses, paying for courses, and just organising everything for us, helping.
So you weren't doing cranes and so on in the Pioneer Regiment. What were you doing?
I've mostly been doing the search work and done 2 tours of Afghanistan as a lead searcher in the search team.
Searching for what?
The IDs.
Ah, right. So you're seeking out nasty things that people have planted. Scary times.
Not really. I kind of enjoy the job. and the satisfaction you get after finding a device that you know could possibly name or kill someone.
Inevitably, you can't find them all, and that must be the downside.
No, you can't. As long as you stick to your training, you'll be fine.
And as you look back on your years, what's the memory that you're taking away with you that will always live in there, that will make you proud to have been a pioneer?
I think it would be the comradeship between all the lads. It's like just a second family, really, and some of the best 6 years of my life. It's unbelievable.
And how was the parade for you?
The parade was outstanding. The support from the town was brilliant.
The outgoing Private Rook of the Pioneer Regiment. And amongst others we spoke to in the crowd here, there was a lady whose son-in-law's in the regiment, and she was pointing out that although it's a logistics regiment, that doesn't mean they don't get involved in the thick of the action. The son-in-law had just saved someone's life just the other week during a tour of duty in Afghanistan. Spoke also to a female member of the NAFI staff from the Bicester garrison, who said, Bicester is Pioneer, Pioneer is Bicester. I suppose we're going to have to say was. Phil, back to you.
Charles, thank you very much for that. Farewell then to 23 Pioneer.